Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. This episode is brought to you by The Wellness Paradigm, a holistic health coaching company shifting the way that women understand and heal their bodies. Through bioenergetic testing, functional lab testing, and functional nutrition, we uncover what traditional approaches often overlook so you can stop guessing, start healing, and finally feel like yourself again. No more one size fits all protocols, just real answers, deep rooted healing, and the clarity and confidence you deserve to feel incredible. It's time to shift the paradigm of women's health. Now, on to our show. Hello, Eva. We were having a
Hello.
fun time chatting before we recorded, so I'm so excited for this episode. One thing that we kind of aligned on was bridging, the science with this nervous system work and how powerful this blend can be for people. And so Eva is a former ICU nurse turned yoga therapist who specializes in the neuroscience and physiology of yoga to help heal chronic pain, improve sleep, and regulate nervous systems. And she has over 8 years experience working with veterans, first responders, and those in recovery. She blends yoga therapy, Reiki, vibrational healing, and breath work to help guide others in reconnecting with their bodies and transforming stress into resilience. So fun. I can't wait to kind of jam into this, but I'd love for you to just introduce yourself a little more and how you got into this sort of work.
Well, again, my name's Eva. I've been in healthcare for over 20 years, almost 25 years now. Worked nights in hospitals for 20 years, and part of that was in the ICU as charge nurse for the majority of the time that I was working in the ICUs, and not a small ICU with maybe 4 beds. This was a major hospital in a major city with we had a medical ICU, medical surgical ICU, and then sometimes we had a third ICU that was extra spaces for incredibly busy times. And one of the things that I started to notice after a few years of working in the ICU was that I wasn't sleeping well. I was crabby. I didn't have extreme joy. And I say that meaning, I noticed that I didn't have a lot of times where I just felt really connected to my friends, my family. I didn't find myself laughing hysterically all the time. I felt this sense of I'm missing something. I'm missing me. Honestly, I felt like I was a shell of who I actually was. And that to me was a signal. I needed to start doing something. So I did two things. I started looking around for a yoga mentor, and I also started looking for places where I could volunteer. And one of those was a nonprofit that did adaptive cycling for veterans and first responders with PTSD. And then at the same time, I also found my yoga mentor who had a very similar love for the military and wanting to be of service and work with the military to help facilitate that healing that is needed in high stress environments. One of the things that we don't even realize is just how horrifically out of balance our nervous system is. We think we do something that is some self-care. We go, get a massage, or we go on vacation for a couple days, and then we come back and we think, okay, I'm good, I'm balanced. But really all it did was just bring us a little closer to balance, to where it felt different, but not necessarily in balance. When I started doing that, when I started yoga teacher training, I started volunteering with an addiction recovery unit as well, teaching yoga once a week to folks that were in an addiction recovery program. And this was mostly men, mostly active duty, and they were so receptive. And we had a really good time, and I kept it very lighthearted, very pro-choice in terms of you get to choose, you get to decide. You're in the room, you get to decide how you want to participate, if you even want to participate. And that had a really great outcome for the folks in that program, where a lot of folks wanted to continue practicing yoga once they were out of the program and back in their everyday life. And I started working with clients privately, noticing that people were coming off of sleep medications, needing fewer pain medications, needing are able to go further, a bigger time span in between pain injections. And they were talking about how they had deeper relationships with their family members. They were laughing more, they were crying more, but they were feeling their emotions. After a certain amount of time, I also started teaching two yoga teachers, meaning I was teaching future yoga teachers and bringing the science component, bringing in the anatomy and the physiology. And eventually it ended up me becoming a yoga therapist and working with nurses who also have been extremely burnt out. And honestly, I have been away from the bedside for 5 years, and almost every day there's an example of how different of a person me in this moment in time is from the version that I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. The most glaring example of that was we have three children, and the youngest was the one that really was still at home and saw this transformation within me. And one of the reasons why I stepped away from the bedside is because getting ready for work one day and putting my lunch together, and I took my lunch with me every single day. That's a whole other conversation, the lunches that happen and the food that's
Oh,
available for staff in the hospital.
we can.
It's just
Oh,
the yeah. So especially on nights. And he looks at me and he said, "You're always smiling now." And I wait, what do you mean? And he's like, "Oh, well, now that you're only working, maybe 1 or 2 nights a week and you're doing yoga so much more, you smile so much more. You're happier all the time and you just seem happy. Like you're like loving life." And all I could think of was, if this is who you're seeing now, who have you been seeing for the last 13, 14 years?
yeah.
And then I think maybe another year or so later, all the kids were home for the Christmas holiday, and the kids were in the kitchen. We have a really open floor plan, so it's not like they were in a whole other room. And the kids are all doing the dishes after a meal. And I heard one of them, "Oh, we got to make sure we got to do it exactly this way because this is the way Mom likes it." And the youngest goes, "Yeah, she's not that person anymore. She doesn't care."
Wow.
And it's those examples where I just sit there and think, okay, I know I love my kids. I know I showed up for them all the time,
Hmm.
but what kind of parent was I actually?
Hmm.
And it was, the stress. They got the older kids and got the stressed out version of me because they were both living their lives out in the world by the time I really truly stepped into being a yoga teacher and then a yoga therapist. And so this pervasive idea in healthcare that we can compartmentalize, that we can shove all of our emotions down, and it doesn't affect us when we run from code to code to code, or we're sitting at the bedside with a 95-year-old who didn't actually want to come into the hospital in the first place, but the family felt really confused and unsure of what decisions to make in the heat of the moment and decided to do the whole process. And you're sitting at the bedside watching all of this and thinking, how? How do we process this? How do we come to grips with our role in that moment? And so there's a lot of moments that I am really, really grateful to have been a part of. And there's a lot of moments that did not end well that I am still grateful to have been there and to have been a kind, hopefully kind and compassionate person. But at that moment, I did everything I possibly could for that person,
Yeah.
even though the outcome was not good. And then there are also times where I was stressed and reactive and responding from a highly imbalanced nervous system,
Hmm.
and having to come to terms with that and take that accountability and take that responsibility and go, okay, I recognize that that was the state of my nervous system. How do I be of assistance to other nurses, other physicians, other medical providers, so that they can recognize that what they feel or what they aren't feeling in this moment is it all comes down to how balanced is your nervous system and
Mhm.
what can you do to bring more balance into your nervous system. And I've started to use the term practicing radical self-care because, on an airplane, what did the flight attendant always tell us? In case of emergency, put your oxygen mask on first.
Mhm.
And here, this analogy, I tell all of my students, I'm going to science the shit out of yoga. So we're going to go down the yoga road right here in terms of the physiology of this and the neuroscience of it. The state of your nervous system, and the more imbalanced that it is, the more it creates lies and barriers. And so when you've been working in healthcare for a long time and you've been compartmentalizing and you've been shoving it all in and not processing it, your body's lying to you and telling you you're fine, but it's not. It's
Mhm.
actually sending you at the same time, your body's sending you signals telling you're not fine. It's your nervous system, the imbalanced nervous system that says, oh no, we're fine. We're fine. We can do this because
Survive.
you're behaving through a mechanism that was designed purely for survival.
Mhm.
You're acting and behaving and living in
Mhm.
a mechanism that was designed to prevent you from getting eaten from a woolly mammoth.
Mhm.
But we are living in that particular mechanism almost 24/7 and not understanding why it is that we snap at our kids, why it is that we walk into the house and we see that the dishes aren't done and there's clothes that are sitting on the couch and they're not folded, and we walk into the house and we throw our stuff down and we say, am I the only one that actually gives a crap about what is going on in this house? And why is it that I have to do absolutely everything and I have to take care of all of you people because you can't take care of yourselves?
Mhm.
And then we think, I don't know why I got so upset. And we don't see that this is all a product of the state of our nervous system. Is it balanced? And
Mhm.
we think, okay, I did some self-care. I went for a walk, right? So we've got a really heightened sympathetic nervous system. I went for a walk and it brought me down here. And I did some yoga. So it brought my parasympathetic nervous system up a little bit. And I called my friend, but we ended up, bitching about her husband the whole entire time. And, or, whatever it was. So, you know what? We thought it was self-care, but it actually brought us back up here. And then if you're in the medical field or if you're in the any career where you live in a high stress environment, you're going to watch some kind of TV show and you're going to watch something that is exactly the same environment that you work in, and you think it's fun and it's lighthearted, but what's it actually doing?
Mhm.
And the whole time, our nervous system never comes anywhere close to balanced, and we think, but I'm fine.
Fine. I'm not stressed. I'm handling it fine.
Or one of my favorite things, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
I can't tell you how many clients. I'm the best 5 hour sleeper you've ever met. No, 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 don't brag about that to me, please. We gotta fix this. But I like what you said about survival because so often, I mean, we've worked with hundreds of doctors, nurses, people with a lot of secondary trauma, right? And they are not supported. There's no support, first of all, like there's none. And we're just not we, you guys are expected to just be fine, to go be great at your job, to handle long hours that are, I mean, sometimes 24 hours, night shifts, all of these things that are really damaging for our health. I could talk about circadian rhythm at the same time, and then expected to go usually have a family, provide for that family, and be present and capable and, a great, present, healthy parent for kids, right? And then expect to do quotation self-care and all these things. And suddenly it's just like, we think, yes, I'm fine. I can handle all of this. And then, you and I were kind of half joking before this. It's like, but suddenly we start developing autoimmune issues. And suddenly we start developing hair loss and fatigue. And we don't know why we're so tired all the time. It must be the work because that's hard. And yes, it is. And suddenly, our hormones start getting off and, all of our lab work's a little weird. So then suddenly it's just this medication here, this medication, and we don't realize that this is not your body handling stress. Just because you're on medications that bring it to quotient balance is not mean our body's handling stress. And it's not that you are not going to be stressed. If you are a doctor, if you are under not everybody, under high pressure, let's say it like it is. And you can still handle stress differently and make your body more resilient to it, which is so important, which is why, I love you bringing mention to like the nervous system, right? It's like, because I think a lot of people tune off. I'm just stressed. This is the way my life's going to be. And your body can handle it better. And there's this whole other side to health and well-being and happiness. And we don't see it. Like I got little shivers when you're talking about your kid, because it's like people do not realize the impact they're having on their family, on their kids, on their patients, right? And I think you might see this a lot too. Like there's so much power in healing in the energetic state you're in and healing, people you're around too, right? Especially in this field, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the thing is it's not just the interactions between me and the patient or the health provider and the patient. It's also the relationships and the interactions between health providers and other providers, the nurses, the doctors, the respiratory therapists, the phlebotomists, the pharmacists, all of the different people that are involved in the process of medical care
Mhm.
are all experiencing this to a certain extent, where there's this me versus them mentality where are you crying? Like are you what are you why are you crying? What is going on, right? Or why can't you just take down the notes of what I'm saying? Just stop asking so many questions. Just take the notes, right? There's this almost, and I say this a lot, and if you're not in a nurse field, you may not have heard this, but there's this thing, and it is pervasive. It has been going on for decades. There's this saying, nurses eat their young, because there is a hazing that happens when new nurses come into the field, and this happens in a lot of different environments. We've not can do, this is not exclusive to nursing. It's just we've given it this name so that we can say, oh, well, that's just, nurses eat their young. Some people are like that, some people aren't, right? It is exhausting, physically exhausting to go through the training to be in the healthcare field, right? It is, I had a nurse professor that said, if at any point in time you have nothing to do, you need to call your friends and find out what it is that you forgot, because you should not just be sitting around doing nothing. There is something that you should be doing the entire time that you're in this program. And there was this, 3 strikes and you're out mentality as well too. You do everything right or you're out. And then you get into your job and you think, oh, now people are going to support me. People are going to encourage me. People are going to mentor me. This is going to be fantastic. And then you get into this environment and people look at you and go, oh, do you not know what you're doing? Oh, how so sad for you. Let me make fun of you some more. And that's going to help. And which is why the average nurse usually quits the career, quits the profession somewhere between day 0 and 2 years.
Wow.
And in 2020, there was over 200,000 nurses that left the bedside.
Yeah. Oof.
And so, when people are talking about, well, there's a shortage of nurses. There's not a shortage of nurses. There's a shortage of nurses with healthy nervous systems that are able and willing to be in an environment that's not supporting them. And so, and I'm really blessed to have been in this environment. I am working with a group of nurses that a friend of mine started a movement called Nurses Feed Their Young. And I'm an expert in her community. But it's a movement of, okay, we need to change the nursing profession. We need to change healthcare, and we need to start supporting each other. We need to start empowering each other, because what we're not realizing is if we're mocking our patients, if we're mocking our coworkers,
Mhm.
that's a symptom of an imbalanced nervous system. That's a symptom of stress. That's a symptom of compassion fatigue, whatever it is that you want to call it, emotional fatigue, burnout. It is a symptom of a highly imbalanced nervous system where our limbic brain has physically disconnected our ability to feel compassion and empathy. And so, when we get into this and I start explaining it to people, all of a sudden, especially when I start talking to veterans and healthcare providers, and I say, look, this is your nervous system in a negative feedback loop that is perpetuating these lies about, well, I'm fine. I can do it by myself. I'm fine with only 4 or 5 hours of sleep. I'm good.
I think the hard part is you genuinely feel fine. Like that's the hard part. Like your body literally is so smart. I mean, it's just like it thinks it is genuinely fine. So we look at it from the outside, we're like, oh God. But like it's very hard to because you don't want to convince them. Try to convince them like, hey, you're really not fine. And if you keep down this path in a certain amount of years, things are really gonna start going awry. you know?
And that's the thing, you've mentioned it before, is that when you're in this negative feedback loop, your body is producing cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, which we're supposed to have. We're supposed to have those chemicals circulating in our body, but not to the extent that they float around when we're in this survival mechanism. We're not designed to be operating on hyperdrive for day after day after day after day, because eventually, yes, our body starts degrading. It starts breaking down. I mean, the amygdala is already overactive, the hippocampus is breaking down, and then it travels from there to where our arteries and our veins are being damaged by inflammation. Our heart, it's one of the big reasons why night nurses all typically have some type of cardiovascular dysfunction, is
We're just talking
because
about that.
it starts in the arteries and the veins. Well, it started in the limbic brain, and then it translated into an overabundance of cortisol, epinephrine, or norepinephrine, and adrenaline, and then increased levels of glucose in the blood that causes damage in the capillaries and the arteries and the veins, and then it snowballs from there. So we have higher incidences of chronic pain, higher incidences of chronic illness, depression, insomnia, sleep disturbances, weight gain, metabolic disorders, diabetes, hypertension, coronary artery disease. I mean, the list just goes on, but basically what the medical community and what researchers are starting to show over and over and over is that stress inside of the body, the inflammation that is created by being in this negative feedback loop, by not completing the stress cycle, not releasing stress, leads to almost all of our chronic illnesses, autoimmune disorders. And there's a lot of folks that have been doing this work for decades, and again, being kind of ridiculed by a lot of the traditional scientists, because they think, oh, no, it can't be that simple. It can't be that simple. Bessel van der Kolk, he's the author of The Body Keeps the Score. And he's been working with the military, working with veterans, working with PTSD since the 1980s. Stephen Porges and the polyvagal theory. And then Dr. Daniel Amen doing perfusion, doing PET scans on different types of, I'm going to call them brain disorders versus, the traditional terms that we use, because it all comes down to what's the physical health of the brain, as well as what's the chemical imbalance that's happening that's manifesting the particular pathology. And so the treatment for a lot of those things is, yes, the traditional medicine, but it's tailored to the specific perfusion imbalances in the brain, and movement, lifestyle changes, and supplements. eating habits, movement, sleep, and medication working together to find where's the happy balance for this particular individual. And it's person-centered. This check-the-box medication system that we have currently we're seeing it's falling apart. Because, I mean, I don't know if you've seen the trend on social media lately, but that there's a lot of providers that are going straight to the camera and saying, hey, guess what? I'm sitting in my car having this discussion with the insurance company about whether or not my patient should be allowed to stay overnight after having had this major reconstructive surgery on their torso, but they want to know if they really need to spend the night over in the hospital after this surgery. Meanwhile, the patient's intubated, sedated, and in the middle of the procedure while the surgeon is being called out to talk with the insurance company. Okay. And there's a lot of providers starting to do that, to call to attention what's been going on behind the scenes for a long time. Because again, this is not, there's so many ways in which that's a rabbit hole. I don't know.
That's a rabbit hole.
But I mean, the things that we can do for ourselves is how we start to take back our health. Mm-hmm. There is a conjunction between traditional allopathic medicine and integrative health, integrative medicine, functional medicine. There's a conjunction between all of those, as well as what's been labeled as alternative therapies, therapies that have been around for not just centuries, we're talking thousands of years. Traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, acupuncture, yoga has been around it's been around as long as Ayurveda, because they're sister sciences. Mm-hmm. And so when you start to incorporate these lifestyle practices, you bring balance into your nervous system. You're sleeping better. You have more energy. You're more loving to your partner. You're more loving to your children. You're more kind and compassionate to the random person in the grocery store. You're not having road rage episodes, but you're also not carrying the weight of these negative interactions. One of the examples that I use with my students is you're driving on the highway, and we call it a Texas exit here because it just seems to be pervasive on highways here in Texas, where somebody's in the far left lane and they decide they're going to just slam across 5 lanes of traffic to exit right at this moment. And I don't recall this happening in Michigan quite the way that it does here. So I don't know if it's exclusive to this area or if this is just the state of everybody's nervous system currently in the world. And that person exits really quickly. You have to slam on your brake. And the way that you respond in that moment gives you an indication of the state of your nervous system. So do you go, oh, what a tool, and then just go back to driving and do whatever you're supposed to do? Do you scream and yell and swear and you're shaking your fist at the person or giving them some, your number one gestures or whatever it is? Or you drive to where you are and you get there and you're telling everybody about this jerk that was on the highway and almost killed you. And then you go home and you're like, somebody says, well, how was your day? And you're like, oh, well, I almost died on the highway. You're not going to believe what happened. And you're carrying that with you. But even if you had well, apparently they had somewhere important to be mentality, the physical representation of all of that, because in that moment, the person exits, cuts you off, and everything in your body clenches tight. Everything, all the way down to your sphincters, tightens up. And the question is, how much of that remained in your body after the episode was over? And the thing is that nobody completely 100% releases all of that energy. And we have opportunities to be able to do things. This is why self-care, this is why I'm constantly saying practice radical self-care. Because it's not just, can I pay my bills? It's not just my creepy boss. It's not just my annoying neighbor. It's not just that my mother-in-law keeps calling me, telling me how I'm not handling my kids well. It's all of these things combined, and the clenching that we do, not just mentally, maybe physically, but it's viscerally that we're doing everywhere in our body. And then what are we doing to be able to soften and release that? And this is why we go from being little kids that are flexible and can take our head and bring it up over the top of our head and stick our feet in our mouth and waddle it all this way and that way, to adults that grunt and moan when we go to pick something up off of the floor. And if you watch older adults and you watch them walk, they have this lurch quality to them where they're holding their arms a specific way and nothing is moving in their body except for their feet and their, maybe their legs are moving a little bit. I'm walking behind nurses in the hospital all the time, and I'd see them walk where they're swaying from side to side. And all I kept thinking was, that's not the body that I want to have in another 10, 20, 30 years. And it doesn't have to be, because it doesn't require 2 to 3 hours at the gym every single day. It just requires developing an awareness, listening to your body. I tell my students there are four ways that your body is talking to you every single day. Every morning that you wake up, your body is telling you, how did you move? How did you breathe? How did you eat? And how did you sleep? It's giving you feedback off of yesterday, last week, the month before. And each day we have an opportunity to move better, breathe better, eat better, and sleep better. And when we do that consistently, we see I have more energy, I have better sleep, my mood is better, my body feels better. I'm able to move, I'm able to get down on the floor and play with kids, grandchildren, pets, whatever's in my life. I'm able to do things that allow me to enjoy my life and not be worried about, well, I can't do that because I can't bend down, or I can't do that because, I'm not going to be able to walk for 2 days afterwards. And it doesn't mean I go out and I run Ironmans. Maybe I do. I mean, come on. Some of the people that have been running Ironmans, like there's a lady in her 90s that ran the Kona Marathon a few years ago, broke her collarbone when she fell off of her bike, got back on her bike, threw her arm into a harness, rode the rest of the 100 miles, and then turned around and ran the marathon portion of it. 90 some years old. And all I could think of is, yes. Those are the examples that we want to see. This idea that we get old and slow down and, get fat and do nothing does not help us to stay healthy. And
so that's an excuse.
yeah, and starting now, wherever you are, starting now, there's little things that you can do every single day to help you.
I think, if somebody has been stuck in this chronic state of maybe not even knowing, fight or flight, stress, whatever you want to call it, what would be 2, 3, of your favorite tools to kind of give them to help shift their body into maybe not even tools or just sayings or something to help them maybe bring some awareness into this and shift their body a little bit?
Okay, so one of my favorite things to do is to bring one hand to your heart and one hand to your belly. And this one's really simple because you don't have to do anything except breathe. And if you're breathing, you're practicing yoga. So if you bring your hand to your heart and one hand to your belly, all you're doing here first is just observing, where does breath move in your body? And if breath is only moving in the upper torso, usually it means that there's a lot going on up here. If breath is moving down towards the solar plexus area, you're probably more balanced. And if breath is moving down into the low belly, it means that there's less activity. Now, doesn't always mean that that's exactly the way that you should be breathing, because there's times when we need to be more energetic. but it's a really good way to get a sense of what is the current state of my nervous system? Where am I? Where am I? And then from there, just adjusting your breath, taking longer inhales, longer exhales. And another thing that I really like to do is offer spaces for people to be able to adjust what we're doing to meet what they need. So there's something called equal breathing, where you do a 4 count in and a 4 count out. If you are doing that and you do 2 to 3 or 4 breath cycles, and all of a sudden you start to feel anxious, that is your body telling you that for you, equal breathing needs to have a longer exhale. And so when you do that, you just continue to do a 4 count inhale, but then you gradually start to change the exhale to maybe it's a 5 count, maybe it's a 6 count. And all you're looking for is just feel more grounded, more present, more here. And then if you'd like, you can extend the exhale even further, and then that's going to be a more relaxing breath. But if we have been operating in a very heightened nervous system for a long time, relaxation, stillness feels uncomfortable, incredibly uncomfortable. And you can see this. I teach a group yoga class twice a week. And you can see this when we come to Shavasana, the very last pose in a yoga class, which if you've been in a yoga class for a long time, that's your favorite pose. You're like, yes, Shavasana. We get to just like lay here, and it's meditative, it's reflective, it's softening. It's the reward for everything that we did throughout the class. But if your nervous system is very much out of balance, Shavasana can feel like the longest 5 to 8 minutes of your life. It feels like torture. Because the idea of just sitting there and being still is incredibly uncomfortable. And if that feels uncomfortable for you, the idea of, and this is where trauma-informed yoga is really just absolutely fantastic, because you get to decide, do I want to continue to lay there and be uncomfortable? Do I want to try to find the edge of uncomfort and maybe use my breath, soften a little bit, let that relaxation come in? Or do I just want to, no, I'm not in the space to be able to do this today. And then just sit up. That's it. That's all you have to do. Just sit up. Say, okay, I'm done. In this, the yoga portion of it is making that decision and also not being disruptive and stealing all the other students in the class, stealing their ability to have the peace and the quiet, to really just luxuriate in that Shavasana. And that can be kind of challenging, because there's been a couple times where in a yoga class I would do an 8-minute Shavasana, and there was a student that would just get so angry every single time. And she'd come up and she'd sit up and she'd look at me and she would try to be quiet, but she was really angry and frustrated, and she'd look at me and she would just mouth, "It's too long, it's too long." And I'm like, okay, just keep coming back, just keep coming back. But when you're in that heightened nervous system, peace, calm, stillness, relaxation, if that is challenging, then I'm a big fan of minute meditation. Because do what you can every single time that you show up. And again, coming back to the neuroscience of it, if you have been in these patterns of always seeking out, always not necessarily seeking out, but just automatically shifting into responding, reacting through a heightened nervous system, that's what's comfortable for you. That's what your brain gravitates to, because it's easy, it's fast, and the neural pathways are already built. They're the super train of the neural pathways. When we create new habits of meditation and stillness and relaxation, we're laying cobblestones compared to the super train. And so it takes time, and we have to lay each brick by brick. And then it eventually switches from the cobblestone road to, maybe it's the fast car, or maybe it's the train, and then eventually it gets to the super train speed that we're doing. But that all takes time. And it's recognizing that your brain keeps wanting to shift and gravitate to the old pattern because it's fast, it's known, we know what to do. It's uncomfortable and challenging to have to sit here in stillness, or to do oh wait, my brain shifted during meditation and I started thinking of my to-do list and I started thinking of my grocery list, and oh crap, okay, I gotta come back to meditation. It just takes consistency. And so minute meditations to me are one of the most fantastic things, minute practices. It's the consistency that builds the pathways, that creates the new pattern, the healthier patterns, the functional patterns. And this is whether we're talking about movement patterns that you have, breathing patterns that you have, to the things that we do in our morning routine, our evening routine, the patterns that we have in our evening, and how we sit down for dinner, or how we have conversations with friends. All of those things, every single one of those is a pattern. The way that we respond and use our words is a pattern. And so one of the biggest areas for us to look at is what's the relationship that I have with myself, right? So how do I talk to myself? And that in itself is a big indicator of the state of our nervous system. If we're, again, coming back to the flight attendant and the oxygen mask, are we putting the oxygen mask on for ourselves, or are we always putting other people ahead of ourselves? And the language that we use when we say things like, "Oh, well, I suck at that," or I'm not, that's just not me. I'm not good at that. I can't do that. Those words are, again, they're an indication of our nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
Are we talking kindly to ourselves? Are we talking compassionately to ourselves? Are we saying words to us that we would say to our best friend?
And the way we speak to ourselves is so huge, so underrated too, And but I love kind of weaving that all together on that being a really good indication, right? So many good little nuggies here. Nuggets. Thank you so much for being on here, for sharing all this beautiful wisdom with us. If people wanted to connect with you, find you, please let us know where they can.
Absolutely. So I'm on social media as Eva Z Wellness. It's EVAZEE Wellness. And I also have a website, evazwellness.com. And there are free downloads, there are courses. I do Reiki, Vedic counseling, yoga therapy, and for nurses, there are CE courses that you can take to bring all of this into your practice, whether it's your daily practice, your professional practice, your personal practice, and gets your continuing education as well.
Win-win. I love that. Love when I can kill two birds with one stone, right?
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you so much. If you guys found this helpful, I would absolutely love to know. Either leaving a review is always helpful, or just shooting either of us a DM and just sharing, any little golden nuggets that you took away. And thank you so much for taking the time being here. I loved our conversation, and we'll catch you guys on the next show.
Thank you so much, Shannon.